Good day and welcome to this week's episode of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. I am your host, Rhonda Dono, attorney at law. Once again, I'm happy to be here, I'm happy to be alive, and I'm sure you are as well. This week's episode, we are going to speak about the role of the Copyright Music Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, and basically artists' rights, the law, and everything that you need to know about CUT. And of course, I have the distinguished pleasure of my guest on studio, via Zoom. He is Mr. Curtis Jordan, the president of CUT, as well as Mrs. Ayana Lewis, who is the chief executive officer of CUT. And just a little bit about them before I basically introduce them to you. Mr. Curtis Jordan is an award-winning recording artist, motivational speaker, author, founder, and manager of Curtis Jordan's Coaching Academy and Caribbean Gospel Music Tours. At the age of 35, the Rima native has charted a path of excellence through the world of music based on his personal convictions and passion to see youth live a better quality of life. Of course, he has produced a number of hits, recording gospel music and R&B singles, including Trust Me, as well as Alive. And he has had nominations for the Caribbean Gospel Marling Awards. He's a founder of the Curtis Jordan's Coaching Academy, a premier arts and entertainment training academy that caters to training, mentoring, and providing a friendly space for young creatives to flourish for the last 10 years. And on November 6, 2020, Mr. Jordan was appointed as a director on the board of the Copyright Music Organization of Trinidad and Tobago. And in November 2022, he was elected president, a massive move towards being a strategic voice of the gospel music scene and ultimately to the creative industry in the Caribbean region. And a bit about Mrs. Ayana Belgrave Lewis. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Copyright Music Organization of Trinidad and Tobago since 2018. She's a certified accountant, and she has served as CUT's Manager of Finance and Administration since January 2006. The portfolio at CUT has grown throughout her tenure, and she's responsible for an overall management of the organization's financial resources during that time. And now, of course, she's in charge of the management of the entire Copyright Music Organization of Trinidad and Tobago. So without further ado, I would like to welcome both of you, Mrs. Lewis and Mr. Jordan. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
I know this was a handful, but of course it's important to recognize your achievement and work, and congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Yes, so let me start with you, Mrs. Lewis. Of course, you are the Chief Executive Officer of CUT. Of course, CUT is a recognized institution, a collection and rights agency in Trinidad and Tobago. But tell the viewers and listeners more about who is CUT?
In short, CUT is what we refer to as a collection management organization. What collection management organization, what we do, or CMO as it's most commonly known as, we collect license fees on behalf of our members, and we distribute those license fees that we would have collected to our members as royalties. We are a non-profit organization, which means to say that everything that we have collected, we utilize a portion of it, a small portion of it, to cover our expenses, and everything else is distributed to our members during our distribution, which occurs 4 times annually. We are a non-governmental organization. A lot of people seem to think that we are a government-run body, but we are not. We are a non-governmental organization, non-profit, and we exist to administer the rights on behalf of our members.
Right. So therefore, I note you said that you're non-governmental. So therefore, in terms of financial backing, what is your strategy in terms of that? Particularly, you all are recognized. I assume it's a big organization.
Right. We get our funding through the issuing of licenses for the use of music. That is our main source of revenue. Actually, in fact, it's our only source of revenue. We issue licenses for persons who utilize music every day, be it in the background in a restaurant or at an event.
So therefore, is it that you are, basically you said you're a non-governmental organization, but are you a part of an act of parliament in terms of being the recognized music collection institution in Trinidad and Tobago?
No, we are not. We are recognized under the Copyright Act as a licensing body.
A licensing body. And of course, I know that in Trinidad and Tobago there seem to be more than one licensing body. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So in terms of persons who wishes to make or choose an option of which licensing body they can decide to select, how will that work in terms of cut?
Okay, there really isn't a choice. What happens is if you're using the music that belongs to the repertoire of cut, you have to take a cut license. So there isn't really much of a choice to say that, okay, I am using cut music, but I'm going to decide to pay CMO X or CMO Y. If you're using cut music, you have to pay your license fees to cut.
Understood. And therefore, if for instance, another management, well, an organization also has those those members that are part of the organization, that one chooses that, okay, both collection agencies has both repertoires. In terms of choice, I know you are stating that it is mandatory. How do you respond to that?
Okay. Persons would not join an organization for the same rights, right? So if you're a member of one organization for a particular right and you're a member of another organization for another right, when you go to collect your license fees, you need to state clearly who you're collecting on behalf of and the rights that you're collecting for, right? So for instance, a neighboring rights organization cannot go to a user and say, okay, I'm here to collect copyright fees. And I'm here to collect copyright fees on behalf of member X who belongs to another organization. So as a CMO, you need to state clearly the rights that you're representing as well as the rights holders that you're collecting your license fees on behalf of.
And we will go further into that particular aspect because that's important for persons who are composers, etc. But I want to bring in Mr. Jordan in the conversation. Mr. Jordan, I know you are president of CUT. So if you can just describe your role in terms of president and the structure of the organization, over to you.
Well, in a nutshell, my position is, of course, the president, and that oversees the board that has the interests of the members of the entire organization. There are over 4,600 members, and our heart is to ensure that the members are getting their just due, and everything that is up to par to ensure that they're getting most benefits out of being a member. Now, myself and of course all the members of the board would have come from the membership, so that is our heart, and the board itself is made up of 4 writers, not just singers alone, but also 2 publishers, 2 performers, and even 2 producers. So that is the structure of the board, and that's what I oversee on a monthly basis.
Now, tell me, in terms of, you mentioned that the board consists of writers, composers, writers, composers, publishers. Now, tell me, what are the categories of person that allow membership to CUT? Because I think there's probably a misconception in terms of that particular rights or membership composition.
Right. Persons could be a writer, a publisher, performer, producer, where else, or I should say, in other terms, they could be an author, a composer, or a publisher. Yeah, and if I left out any there, I know that we have a few categories.
We have the producers and the performers, and we also have successors. Oh. And successors are those individuals who would have inherited the rights on behalf of a deceased member.
Okay, correct. And you mentioned performers. Just explain in terms of what rights do performers have when it comes to copyright, well, not copyright law per se, but in terms of ensuring that, let's say, they also get some incentive from the publishing or from the playing of their music, etc.
Right. The rights of performers are covered under what we call neighboring rights, right? They are similar to copyright, but they are the rights that are assigned to performers and producers of sound recordings. Now, the rights of a performer under neighboring rights apply where, let's say, an individual is performing at an event. They are performing live on stage. That particular individual has the right to whether or not to prohibit or allow their performance to be broadcast or recorded. Right? Those are the rights for the performers in terms of their live performances. That is not a right that is managed by a collective management organization. That is a right between, let's say, an event promoter and the performer at the point in time. Right. So those are the rights in terms of their live performances. But there's also a right for performers, and it's contained in the sound recordings. So you have a sound recording, and you would have the person performing on that recording. That right, the public performance of that sound recording, also applies to performance.
But in terms of the monetization from cut, can a performer be provided incentive monetarily for their performances?
Yes, when we collect the license fees for the neighboring rights, that license fee is shared between the performer and the producer of the sound recording. Now, the law states that it's supposed to be a 50-50 split, right? That's the default setting. However, if there's an agreement in place between the performer and the producer, CUT would abide by that agreement in terms of paying license fees collected on behalf of the performers and the producer or the master rights owner of the sound recording.
Now, let's deal with obviously, I mean, you're already a member. You have now recorded, produced, written a song. Just take us through the steps in terms of how can one register their song, because of course, you know, in our jurisdiction, copyright basically subsists in your creative work, right, by composing whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be registered. I know some people think that your copyright has to be registered in order for it to be recognized. Can you just clear up that in terms of just the process to get your music recognized by CUT?
Well, okay, you're applying for membership for the first time. If you're applying as a copyright member, you need to work with one work, right? A song. So you come to us and you fill out your application form, and you have to have one work. We use the term work in terms of copyright, and that has to have been performed. It can be performed via a live performance, via the radio, broadcast performance, or even now we are accepting, because of the explosion of digital, we are also accepting if it was posted on a social media site. Okay. Right? So you have one song that you would have written, you would have created, and you can come with that one song and you register as a copyright member with CUT. Right?
Yes.
Now, because we are so talented in Trinidad and Tobago, we may have an individual who writes, but they also perform. Right? So if you're a performer, you can also come into CUT and register. However, the process is somewhat different. We are asking for 3 songs, if I remember correctly, 3 performances. So you come in and you register with 3 performances, and you can become a member of CUT as a performer. Right? So, so you must have been featured on a sound recording, a commercially released sound recording. So it can't be that I would have gone in a venue and performed live, and I want to come and register as a performer. No, you have to have been performed, on a sound recording.
And that is as a composer and a songwriter, a composer and a performer. Right.
So the first instance I gave would have been as a composer, and the second would have been as a performer.
Right. So therefore, Mr. Jordan, I know you are a composer as well as you're a performer, right? You have been a member. Well, obviously you are a member of CUT. Now, in terms of the perspective of a composer performer, when you are registering in terms of the song, how does the producer now come into play when dealing with let's say split arrangement? First, let us just discuss or just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Right. Well, first of all, I always recommend to all artists or composers that when you go to studio, you need to have your notification of works form right there, because things get very, very different when you
agreements. You see that written agreement, yes.
it gets real different. As a matter of fact, everybody is nice and smiley in his studio. Nah, you don't need to register nothing. You don't need, we can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim. So I always recommend upfront that persons and ensure that in the studio before you leave, that you already sat down there and made an agreement that you, based on your input or based on the input of the producer or anybody within the room, anybody that was in that room, whatever part they played, we all have to agree right there as to what the percentage split is going to be. And then I would then take that form to cut to ensure that that is confirmed. You know what I mean? So that I always recommend artists go that direction.
And what is usually the percentage split in those circumstances?
Well, it really depends on the amount of persons that was involved in the track. Sometimes I would have had maybe one writer or maybe two writers and the producer and myself within the room. So sometimes the split could have been 40, 20. So it really depends. It's really up to the group of persons within the room as to what that agreement was. I could have gone in the studio with already having my melody, or I would have carried my beat already, and I just went there to do some post-production and just to finalize and mix the song. Then maybe a 10% goes to the producer and 90% towards me. So it really depends in that moment as to what all persons involved would have agreed to.
Now, usually on the cut form, and I'm sure Ms. Lewis can probably verify, there is a part for writer and there's a part for producer. Can you just verify in terms of in split arrangement? Let's say it's just two persons. How does cut recognize in terms of the writer and producer on one recording, one composition that is, in terms of when you complete the forms?
Okay. First thing, we have two forms. We have a notification of work form and we have a notification of recording form. You would not see a writer and a producer on the same form because they are different rights. So on the notification of work form, which is for the copyright, what you will find is author, composer, and publisher, right? Not producer. So you find publisher. Now, generally speaking, what the rule or what the guidelines state is that the author composer their share should not be less than 50%, right? And that is the share between the author composer and the publisher, right? So that is the recommended split generally. That if you are assigning a publisher to your work, the publisher should not be assigned more than 50%. Right, that is the rule. If there's no publisher, there's no rule really and truly as to how you decide to split your work. You can share it equally amongst yourself. You can take the bigger share depending on what is your contribution to the song. We tend not to get involved in those types of negotiations. All we say is before you come to cut, make sure, like my president would have said, make sure that you have your agreements in place. The only guideline, like I said before, would be between the publisher and the author-composer, 50-50.
Now, based on experience as an attorney at law, I know that I may have had some interaction with cut, particularly in line with copyright infringement. Now, of course, it is very difficult to maneuver that, especially when it comes to piracy, right? However, in terms of cut's rule, do cut mediate disputes?
It's not something that we get into because remember, chances are both parties would be our member, right? So especially if the dispute relates to share splits, that is something that we do not get ourselves involved with at all. Recently, back in 2018, what we would recommend is that back in 2018, the IPO office, the Trinidad and Tobago IPO office, in collaboration with the World Intellectual Property Organization, they came together. They have an MOU, and the MOU makes available ADR resolution for persons under copyright disputes. We would recommend that in those circumstances, individuals take the matter to the IPO and utilize their services.
And let's say, for instance, there's a dispute in terms of who is the exact owner of the composition, both parties would have registered or provided notification of work, etc., for the same composition. Mm-hmm. How does Scott deal with that? Does Scott recognize both until the dispute is settled, or do they refuse both registration until the dispute is settled?
What we do in a case like that, let's say both works were registered with the organization. What we do is any royalties that would have been generated for that particular work, it is held in suspense, is not paid out to either party until the matter has been settled, right? So what we tend to do is advise persons to utilize what we call the poor man copyright, yes, whereby you would have written your composition. If you can record it, you do so. And you mail a copy to yourself via registered mail, and you keep that unopened until the event you need to use it in a circumstance just like this, right? So you would have shown that on X date you would have written this song, you would have composed your song, and you have your evidence. If you do not wish to do the mailing, we advise also that you lodge it with an attorney, or you can even put it in a safe deposit box in a bank. But the idea is not to have the envelope opened until such time that it is required, to prove ownership.
Or in the digital space, emailing your work to yourself, yeah. Because I know that even in a Word, let's say a document, you can't really alter the properties in terms of when the content was created. So maybe that is something else that can be considered, of course, but it's always better to have concrete proof and evidence.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
Let us take a break, and we will be right back. You are watching Strictly Legal. We have Mr. Curtis Jordan and Mrs. Ayana Lewis from CUT. We'll be right back.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Is it politics? What is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here, Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
And we are back. You're watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. We are speaking about the role of the Copyright Music Organization of Trinidad and Tobago and basically artist rights. We are here with Mr. Curtis Jordan, President of CUT, as well as Mrs. Ayana Lewis, who is the Chief Executive Officer. Now, Mr. Jordan, as the President of this auspicious organization, can you just tell us in terms of what sort of membership incentive that the board has created in terms of sensitizing your members of their roles, of responsibility, education, etc., in the organization as well?
I think that was priority number one on getting into this particular position. I've understood from day one, and that is the first reason why I got into the organization, or even allow myself to be at this level, is the service. It's service, because at the end of the day, the services and all the benefits are there, but persons are not always familiar with it, as well as persons are always registering. Persons are always coming on board that need to be educated. So education was the number one priority from day one. We've had several workshops over the past couple of months for members to be able to log on, and it was via Zoom, where they could understand the very details of the organization, as well as how they are supposed to operate within it to get the most out of it. We've had several, we went heavy into social media, I should say, where we are always posting, and all the posts are geared around education and how they could understand the different types of rights. Because if we be real, we are all creatives. We honestly don't really like to hear all the paperwork and all the legal sides of all of it, but we need to be educated about it to be able to benefit. Some persons, they have tons of songs being recorded, they have tons of songs being performed, but when you ask them, what's going on with the legal side of it, they have none of it recorded, they have none of it registered rather, but they are performing and they're not benefiting. And you would find that the persons who are benefiting the most from CUT are the ones that understand the paperwork side or the legal side of what is required of them. So that's why education has been at the forefront of what we have been doing for the past couple of months. And secondly, what some of the biggest needs, because we will be on the phone with members all the time, and one of their greatest needs is to have quick access, because we live in the world of the digital world.
Exactly.
And everything is at your fingertips. So they want quick access to all of their information at any point in time. And we have had, at least 1 year, we have been digitizing the entire organization, where persons can register a work, become registered, check up on their royalties, check up on the rights that they're registered with, check to see which songs are registered, and so many other services. We've been working on rebuilding our website, that it becomes so user-friendly that nobody has to actually come to the organization to get anything done. At the click of a button on a laptop or even on your phone, you should have direct access to all of the services that CUT offers. And we are so excited about that, because it has been taking a lot of time to get all of it connected. And the main reason for the delay or the length of time to put it together is because there are so many facets of this particular website, which would include getting information from all over the world, because our members' music play globally. To bring all of the data together, and that they're going to have it up to date, is really taking a mammoth amount of energy and work. But within the next 2 to 3 months, we are going to be launching this website in a big way, because it's something that's going to transform the experience of every single member.
That's very impressive, and this is the point I was going to drive in terms of digitization, because obviously we should be moving away from paper-based and more. I mean, everything is, and COVID has really taught us that, you know, in terms of really using the internet, using our resources to get members sensitized, particularly when it comes to registration. Now, the registration process, you're saying that can be done via your website now?
Of course. Every single service, from registering as a member, even paying to become a member because it's a one-time fee, everything that you could possibly do, even getting in contact with persons directly at the staff, you will be able to get all of it done via the website, or even just via the click of an email. Our staff is always on the other end, and from the experience of members, at least over the last couple of months, they would respond under 10 minutes to an email. It is very, very quick, very efficient, and we are very proud of that.
So is there like a membership database in terms of if I am a member or non-member, can I just go on to the website and see who are members?
Not on the current website, but in the future they would have access to that and so much more, so much more. It's going to be. I am as a creative myself. This is a dream come true. And I know it is a cry of all, of especially the new generation. They want access. They want quick movements when it comes to their business. And this is what we're going to be able to deliver within just a few weeks.
Okay,
3 months.
That is very good. Now, obviously on these segments, we try to take calls. So if you will allow me, I just need to get a call from one of the members of the public. Good morning. Okay, my apologies. I got the information wrong. Of course, you can call us at 628-4578 or 623-9376 if you want to call, make a comment. I'm sure there are a lot of creatives, artists that are here that may want to have a question to these guests. I mean, you don't often find them in one space on TV at the same time. So we are privileged. Now, in terms of Miss Lewis, let's deal with the. You mentioned that your revenue, the bulk of your revenue, comes from persons or from entities that play music that belongs to members. So, for instance, you usually see in a lot of these establishments cut stickers. Can you just walk us through in terms of how do you go about enforcing that persons or entities register and pay their licenses?
Sure. I don't like the use of the word enforce.
Right.
We like to encourage persons to do the right thing in terms of taking out a license fee if they're using music. A lot of people, because music is so readily available, they think that most times it should be free, but we need to take into account that it was created by someone and someone would have invested in it, right? So what we tend to do is we have licensing reps, and they would go out and they would visit these premises and they would educate them on the benefits, one, of having music in their business, and two, why they need to pay for the use of the music. And also we like to inform persons as to where the money goes, because you find a lot of conversation happens around just obtaining a license. But we also need to understand that license fee goes back to the creators of the music. So you're enjoying a product, and when we collect the license fee, it's not collects the license fee and that's it. It is paid out as royalties to our members.
Yes. Can you just tell us in terms of what is the fees for these particular licenses? Are there any categories in terms of how you pay the fees, etc.? Because I know, my next question will be, and you could probably cover it, in terms of when there are live performances or live events like fetes, like concerts, etc. How does that work?
All right. The license fees would vary depending on the size and the nature of the business, right? So generally speaking, we'll have what we call an annual license, which runs for 12 months, and then we'll have a one-off license, which would be like for a permit event. So like for a fete or a concert, those license fees would apply. License fees, the tariffs could be based on capacity. It can be based on the number of persons. Let's say, for instance, you're having a dance class. The license fee for that is based on the number of individuals within the class. right? So there are different categories of license fees, and the tariffs are calculated differently. We tend to look at the use, how the music is being used, if it's featured music or if it's background music. And those are the things that we will take into consideration in crafting and in drafting our license fees, our tariffs, right? Yes. In terms of one-off events, right? Because most times you're having an event and the music is featured, right? It's not any background. It's the reason why most persons would be attending the event. Those license fees are based on a percentage of the gross revenue that would have been earned by the promoter. And we use that percentage-based calculation because of the nature of the music to the event. It is featured. It is a big part of why the event is happening in the first place. And a percentage of the revenue is taken in those events, in those types of uses.
And of course, in terms of the subject, let me say, the objective approach to persons who are well, promoters. Like, okay, let me use an example. A promoter is having an event. Their capacity is really $1,500, but just to avoid cut fees, they decide to state that their capacity will be $500. What sort of, sorry, not $500, 500 persons, right? With a less entry fee. What sort of checks and balances that COT has in place to ensure that, okay, this promoter is indeed accurate or indeed, giving correct information? Right.
In terms of, well, we have good relationships with our promoters. Let me say that upfront. And it is very rare very rare that you find a promoter giving us inaccurate information. But our normal procedure is that we do our own checks and balances, so that we go up online, we see what the ticket prices are, right? And then because we have been doing this for so long, we have an idea of the attendance at most of the events. So if I know you are having one of the regular carnival events that a lot of people attend, you can't come to COT and say, well, we only had 200 persons at this event. But we know from the past, historically speaking, your event will have had 5,000 persons. So we will rely on that historic information as well as we will go onto the websites in terms of ticket prices, and we'll see that for ourselves. And in addition to that, we send our researchers to the event, so they would identify and bring back information to the organization in terms of, okay, the attendance was X or the attendance was Y. And that goes both ways.
And therefore, if the attendance was Y instead of X after the event, does COT now write to the promoter to recover the surplus?
Yes, we do. And in the event that the event did not take place in the manner in which the promoter would have liked it to happen, we also give refunds.
Oh, you give refunds. Okay.
Yes,
that is good. That's good to hear.
Yes, we do.
That's good to hear. Now, in terms of, let's say, for instance, I know that Mr. Jordan would have performed recently at, I believe it was Napa or some event, right? And obviously, maybe a promotion, one of the, I don't know if it's a promoter, would have hosted those events. Now, usually these performance spaces would already have COT licenses, but you would find that they would request that the promoter of the event pay COT fees. Is that something that is encouraged?
Okay, and let's look at the license fee that the event space may have. Now, the event space may have what we call a blanket license, but that blanket license may cover their events, right? Meaning to say events that they themselves host that may be covered under their blanket license. Therefore, if a promoter is having an event, they may require that promoter to pay a separate license fee because that fee has not been covered under their blanket license, right? Yeah. That is one scenario. The other scenario may be that the event space has a blanket license that covers both promoter events as well as their events. In an instance like that, the event space would not require the promoter to get a separate license. So it all depends on the license between COT and the event space to determine whether or not the promoter will have to pay a separate license fee.
So it's not as though the event space is trying to prevent or trying to get cut to make more money for cut.
No, that's not the case.
I mean, these are real life scenarios and obviously things that need to be clarified, particularly in the open space. Yeah. And of course, Mr. Jordan, I just want to bring you in here. Of course, as the president of the board of directors, can you just inform how does the process goes to elect or select a board of CUT? And of course, your members, because I know you have quite a wide range of expertise who are members of the organization.
Oh, definitely. Well, of course, a board is selected every 3 years at the AGM, and those persons would have come from the membership itself, and persons who are allowed to vote. The body of the membership is allowed to vote for this full board that I explained before. And from that position, the board then selects a president to operate within the tenure. Yeah.
Also, the members don't select the president; the members just select the board.
That's correct.
Or elect. Well, yeah. And yes, and in terms of, could you just list who are the members of your board? I mean, I know in terms of how many members your board consists of. I know you said 4 writers, 4 composers, but in terms of the personalities. Yeah.
Sure. Currently, our current board, it's Mr. John Arnold, Quinton Gooden, that's Isaac Blackman, that's Mr. Pereira, Doggy Slaughter, as we know him as. Let me see who I am missing there. Oh gosh, my brain sometimes it's just a lot.
Mr. King is also a member of your board?
Sorry?
King.
Yes, Mr. King, and
we also have Corey Francis.
Corey, yes, Corey.
And
Francis.
Kyle Phillips.
Kyle Phillips.
He represents the youth.
Yeah. So there we go. That's a full team that really put a lot of work into on a weekly basis to make sure that our members get as much as they can and benefit as much as they can from.
Correct. Yeah? And how often do you meet?
We meet. Well, it depends. As a board, we meet once a month, but within our board, there are subcommittees that meet once the first week of the month and second week of the month. So. A board member could be meeting sometimes 2 to 3 times per month based on different categories of which we serve. Yeah?
Correct. Okay, that is very good. And in terms of Mrs. Lewis, your staffing, how in terms of your composition, what is the structure of the organization at CUT?
We have a CEO, and then we have 4 departments, and the 4 departments are run by department heads, and then we have our junior level of staff.
So in terms of your numbers?
In total, including myself, we are at 23 persons.
And your offices, do you all have, well, in terms of how many offices
we have 3 locations, 1 in Port of Spain, 1 in San Fernando, and 1 in Tobago.
And for the benefit of the members, could you just state exactly the location, or rather the addresses of these offices and telephone contact?
Okay. You can get us at 623-2688. That's the CUT number. That's our main line. The Tobago office is in Scarborough, Tobago. I can't give you the exact location at this point.
But of course, all information is on the website, which everyone has access to.
Yes, and it's available on the website. Yes. And the other office is in San Fernando, High Street. San Fernando,
yes. So where is the future of CUT going? Now we are digitizing, and before we go to the future, in terms of how does CUT, what is CUT doing in terms of its checks and balances to avoid or to stamp down on piracy in the music industry against its members? Yeah. Any one of you.
We have to work with the TTPS. There isn't a piracy per se section in the organization, so we work with the TTPS. When they apprehend the music pirates, they usually would call us to ask us to identify our music. Outside of that, we have been working with the larger societies because they have the systems where they can monitor stuff online. So, for instance, if you would have posted an event or you would have uploaded, let's say, a video and it has musical content in it, you would realize sometimes that it's removed or you get issued a takedown notice. Right, that is also a part of anti-piracy, but that is in the digital landscape.
And that's like, for instance, with YouTube and all those other types of websites, yeah.
Yes. But in terms of piracy, it's really limited to the work that we do with the TTPS at this point in time.
Yes, because of course, according to the Copyright Act, there's also criminal sanctions in terms of breach of copyright, apart from the civil remedies.
That's correct.
But of course, as in any place, well, in Trinidad and Tobago, in terms of enforcement sometimes is
we have some challenges.
Yeah, there are challenges. I know that. Now, do you all partner with other international copyright organizations in terms of recording and collecting data, etc., in the space?
Yes, we do. We actually have 62 reciprocal agreements with other societies.
Oh, very good.
We have reciprocals with societies in the US, in the UK, as far as Denmark, Germany, Australia, China, Japan.
I think BMI is in the UK.
BMI is in the US.
Yes, the US, yes.
Yeah, BMI is in the US. Yeah, and we have a reciprocal agreement with them also. So as in the Caribbean, we have in Barbados, in Jamaica, and the Eastern Caribbean states, as well as Belize.
So therefore, that means if, for instance, our local composers or performers, music are played elsewhere in other jurisdictions, is it that those data are collected and COT is informed of that data?
What they do in instances like that, they operate just the same way that we would operate. So they would issue the license, collect the license fee, and remit to us the monies that belong to our members.
And of course, you all have technology in place to record locally in terms of how many times music has been played on a specific station, etc.
Yes, we do. We utilize a system called Vericast, and Vericast monitors all the radio and television stations in Trinidad, and they would provide us with a report identifying the songs that were played, all the various codes that we require to do our distributions.
And of course, if it's physical events, that's where you use your researchers.
Yes, we use our researchers, as well as we also utilize the services of DJs. DJs would provide us, I believe, through their Serato machines, they would provide us a listing of the songs that they would have used. And that is also data that we are able to capture in terms of processing our distributions.
Oh, excellent. Of course, I know we are out of time, but just before we go, Mr. Jordan, the future of COT, you as a president, tell us in 30 seconds.
Well, as I said, in a nutshell, we want to continue to improve on all sides. We want to build greater relationships globally because our music is used globally. We want to ensure that our local members collect all of what the world is doing and all the funds that is being generated globally. So we'll continue to develop relationships and MOUs, as well as locally, we want to improve on the data points where the amount of wherever music is played, that they actually get what is due, as well as we want to educate the members on when they play or when they perform, that they continue to submit their playlists and their performers lists, because all of those data points help us to ensure that they get what they truly deserve. So all of those things is what we're working on right now, and for the future we are solely focusing on digitalization.
Most importantly. Thank you. And of course, Mrs. Lewis, 30 seconds in terms of administrative side, the future of COT.
The future of COT is digitization. The future of COT is educating not just our members, but our users on the importance of music, and also the more importantly, paying for the music that you use.
Correct. Thank you so much. There's so much things that have been learned in this session. 1 hour certainly wasn't enough, but I want to thank you both, Mr. Curtis Jordan, President of CUT, as well as Mrs. Ayana Lewis, the CEO of CUT. Thank you so much, and do enjoy the rest of your day and week.
Same to you, and thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Guys, it's a wrap. You have been watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Of course, you can catch our replay online as well as on our traditional media networks, as well as view Strictly Legal or listen to Strictly Legal with Rondell Donowa on our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. See you next time. Have a blessed day. Goodbye.